I think I've always been good at drawing and dabbled in painting, but I didn't really take much of a formal interest in painting until I ended up leaving a job. Formerly I was an academic psychologist. I worked as a lecturer teaching psychology to medical students, and after 10 years of that I got the opportunity to leave and do something different, and so I went to art school. It took 2 years to do a master's at St Martin's, and when I got there I discovered that the course that I was doing was geared towards, it was called Art and Science, and it's a sort of interdisciplinary new course which looks at how to foster interesting collaborations between the art world and the science world, and indeed other worlds around that. So I was one of the very few scientists on the course that was looking into art. Most of them were artists thinking about science or scientific concepts and ideas and materials. And most of the people in my year group had already been to art school and they'd already developed some sort of distinctive art practice. And I didn't really have one, which was a good thing to start off with, but I kind of felt the need to have some sort of craft, you know, and an ability. So quite contrary to my own expectations, I thought I'd just go into doing something very sculptural or installation based or very abstract. I settled on very traditional portrait painting, and discovered that through a bit of practice I wasn't too bad at it. When you train as a psychologist, you're very much training in the modern world to look at human behaviour and attitudes and thought in a very scientific, empirical way. You think about how things might be tested, you look at how behaviours might be observed and recorded and used to explain specific phenomena to do with the brain or to do with social surroundings or whatever. And I think that kind of academic lens informs everything I do, artistically speaking. So I mean, the paintings that I'm showing here are really an effort to consider body language and the ways in which individuals can be identified by very specific habitual postures and stances. I do like to delineate cause and effect, and you know, to think through hypotheses and make judgments in that sort of quite ordered way. So I mean, that's one of the challenges for me going to art school and coming up against sort of contemporary critical theory in its various forms and philosophies. I mean, empathy is I think it's a critical aspect, and that is one thing that's really I've transposed from my academic career. When I was teaching medical students, a lot of the things that we were doing with them was about teaching them to be good communicators, especially in their interactions with patients. So we need to get them to understand the patient's kind of distress or anger or sort of emotional feeling. And some students were good at it intrinsically and some weren't, but we had to set about finding a way of training them all to do it. They all had to be good at that sort of skill, because it's the sort of number one reason that people complain about their doctor is that your doctor doesn't empathise with your condition or your position. So I've looked into the processes of human empathy quite deeply, and I think that interest comes into the act of portraiture quite a lot. You really have to, I don't know, talk to your subjects a lot, your patients, your subjects. For a previous set of work, what I was interested in was facial expressions, and one of the reasons that I chose to use photography was to try and capture very fleeting sort of images of someone's emotional state, which are very difficult to do with life-sitting type portraiture.
Yeah, well, it doesn't stay the same.
yeah. So, I mean, you've seen the sort of previous shows I've had, you get people with quite difficult or quite unusual expressions, or ones that are trying to convey some sort of state of mind. What I did previously was to get people to tell me about specific events that had happened to them in their lives. You know, it could be something very profound, or very trivial, something happy or sad, but something that was very memorable to them. And I'd take photographs throughout the interview with them. And afterwards, just sort of locate one that I thought, this is one that really kind of demonstrates their, you know, emotional feeling about reflecting on that past time. I find people I paint usually are good friends of mine. And I think it helps a lot. I mean, the 4 paintings we have here are, 3 of them are, well, actually 4 of them are very good friends of mine, and 1 of them is my younger brother. So I know these people inside and out, and I think it shows people for whom, when I thought about them, I would think about them in a characteristic position. You know, you'd have a sort of mental stereotype of individuals, I mean, the way that they sort of behave. And often that's a kind of physical portrait in your mind. So I'm trying to sort of recreate a stereotypical physical portrait that exists in my mind. It's difficult for me to say what the you know, critics say about figurative painting, whether it is fashionable or not. Of course, it's never going to go away. It's what we start doing when we first pick up some pencils and paper. You know, we're always trying to represent some form or other. So I don't think they might come and go in fashion, but it's not going to disappear, I wouldn't have thought. The way that I sort of generate a composition is, I suppose, I mean, it's very difficult to articulate in a way. It comes from, I guess, some sort of centre of the brain which is to do with visual mapping and memory, and, you know, so there are all sorts of elements of the past. And as you say, with, you know, talking about how artists and, you know, talking about seeing images in mottled wallpaper, or as we commonly say, seeing images in clouds, or Rorschach ink blots, or any of those sort of things. These are all, I suppose, methods that artists might subconsciously use to sort of amplify that kind of imaginative process in the viewer. I love the diversity of this show. It's a really, there's a terrific range, and the quality is really, really high. I was quite sort of daunted about having stuff here because the standard is so good. Well, this exhibition, I think it's illustrative of some great ideas, and as we were saying with sort of figurative art, there's a lot of really great figurative art here. And it's demonstrating quite clearly that the genre isn't dying or moribund or anything else. It's alive and kicking, and, you know. I first met Jason from ISIS at my degree show, which was last June, and I think it was the private view night, and so we've been merrily knocking back the wine and entertaining our hordes of art collectors and that. And it was very nice to make some nice comments about what I'd done and express some interest in maybe working collaboratively. I don't know where I'm going from here. I'm just sort of making it up as I go along, I'm afraid. I mean, I've got some new projects that I'm working on that I'm excited by, but it's so unpredictable. This world is never, there's no guaranteed path right through it. You know, you have to just take it as it comes, I think.